Japan to buy things that we could buy in the US itself. And even if the US were to sell at higher price, we would save. All that we spend in transportation probably will make it more affordable. This is another point that we make, that it's the U.S. itself loses. They have not attained anything with the blockade. They have not anything but the main purpose, which is the change of regime. But they have not defeated us, and Cuba has a number of things to exhibit on the opposite side. Achievements that go from the social, the political, the economic. This is not the purpose of our conversation here, but I could mention a number of them. In spite of those restrictions, in spite of the difficulties that the embargo creates. This press conference is part of that. My foreign minister has spoken recently with the same purpose. The problem is that many a time the information works in one direction and not in both directions. But one good part of the information technology development is that it allows each and every one of us to have a chance to interact with other people and to read people who are dedicated precisely to putting across views which are different to, let's say, main media, or as I call, transnational media corporations. In Europe, there are many websites, blogs. In Cuba itself, we have made an effort in this regard to put across, because Cuba's views are usually different, at least in the developing world. And many people go to Cuba to see what Cuba is saying about this or that. I think in the bottom of things, it happens because people know that we are not twisting things around, and that we might be wrong. I don't mean that everything we say is correct, but we make our best effort to speak things as they are, talk on the basis of facts, and not be fooling people around. This is what I can say. There is in the document that has been distributed, the last part, a few samples. It was much longer, but I cut it off, of how things of this kind, like Sun Tzu Neo, have been carried out against countries like Brazil. We know a little bit because it exploded recently in Mexico. It exploded a few months back, although not that big a noise was made. In Colombia itself and other countries, technology has been used for illegal purposes, and I think there is an increased awareness in our continent, at least, and I think in the world at large, that the present-day information technologies are not just for sending kisses and hugs to my nephew in Alaska, but to dubious objectives very often, especially if your country or your government has been designated as enemy to counter Sun Tzu Neo. No, as far as I know, we We have devised some because you see the media war against Cuba is not just IT platforms. It's media, traditional media also, and from the U.S. there are radio stations. You see, in Cuba, you tune the radio. We are so close. I don't know if everybody knows. This is Florida, Gulf of Mexico, and Cuba is right here, 90 miles away only. You tune the radio in Cuba. There are more than 200 radio stations from the U.S. that can be tuned sometimes better than our own because they're more powerful. And there are some which are beaming 24 hours a day propaganda against Cuba. Sometimes good, most of the time bad, or lies. And there is even a TV station only for that purpose called Martí TV station. Martí is the name of a Cuban intellectual and patriot. But we have devised technological ways because we cannot accept that to jam specifically the TV station. But as far as I know, to answer your question straight away, I don't think we have had any other device but to denounce the illegality of what's going on.
Do you have that kind of, situation, or if you do, you might not want to tell us. That's all right.
No, that's it is a fact the U.S. is technologically the most advanced country in the world. That's a fact, and most of these IT technologies are their inventions, except for the time when the Indian guy invented the Hotmail thing, but from there to today, it's mostly from there. I was reading recently that, for example, the password thing. Now people is crazy. This is just a passing commentary. People is trying to go into sophisticated passwords that you introduce numbers and letters and number letters and signs, so much, not less than this and that. Even in the U.S., with more sophisticated devices than that, there is nothing safe today. So the best thing that we do, if you want to keep something for some time to yourself, don't talk it, don't send it, because one way or the other there are so few things you can keep as a secret today, because either it's heard from above or watched from above or transmitted by so many means that there is no safe way. So the best thing, if you don't have anything to hide, if you use it for a normal thing, sending a kiss and a hug to your kid in New York or in Paris or in Australia, do it. But if you have something that you don't want others to know, or that could be used against you at one point of time, because, for example, Sun Tzu was working on that. It was creating a critical mass of people, studying each and every one of that 500,000 guys, especially directing things towards the youngsters, because youngsters are easily carried to one way or the other. So if you don't put it on the web. There is something we should not, that is important to take into account when you speak of Cuba. When you talk of Cuba, and you should not lose. Nobody should lose sight of something, that Cuba is not just any country. Cuba is one of the very few countries that in the last 55 years had been subjected to war that continues today in practical terms. And I say war, use the word war not hyperbolically, because this is all part of the war, and it goes to economics, to politics. It's technically a war. So trying to bring a country that is at war, and as a matter of fact with the biggest power on earth, and trying to get Cuba to the same, at par with others, as if others were facing the same thing, is not fair to my mind. And I will read this highlighted. It's a small paragraph. This is the Nation, no, sorry, Bangkok Post, February 15. And this is an article by Noam Chomsky, who is a very well-known name, MIT professor. The article says, "The world of surveillance is our responsibility." And about Cuba, he says, the Godfather meaning the U.S. government, can also be brutal and vindictive. One dramatic and revealing case is U.S. policy towards Cuba since its liberation in 1959. The U.S. reacted almost at once with subversion, aggression, large-scale terror, economic warfare. It is virtually, the U.S. is virtually isolated today internationally on this matter, as annual votes in the United Nations demonstrate. But this is of no concern. Cuba must be punished for what U.S. planners 50 years ago described as Cuba's successful defiance, end of quote. Successful defiance of U.S. policies. So Lekha and the rest, I think it's good to take into account that Cuba is a country that lives under these circumstances at the time of analyzing things. But to close your question, I would say that in spite of that, Cuba is the only country that I know, and I am ready to listen if there is any other one, that allows a foreign embassy in Havana, that is the embassy of the mightiest country on earth, to organize a group of people, to finance them, to direct what they have to do, them into the embassy and tell them you have to do this and this and then that, to provoke a regime change. I wonder if there is any other on this earth that allows that to happen, even in the U.S. Thank you very much for all of your present and your comments and your questions.
ครับนั่นคือสิ่งทั้งหมดที่ท่านพระท่านเอกอัครราชทูตคิวบาประจำประเทศไทยพระท่านวิกเตอร์รามิเรสเปนาท่านได้แถลงข่าวที่สโมสรผู้สื่อข่าวต่างประเทศเมื่อวันที่26 เมษายนวันนี้รายการตามหาความจริงขอบคุณทุกท่านที่รับชมลาท่านผู้ชมไปก่อนสวัสดีครับ